Hey, this is Dave Pryor. Welcome to Leading Agile SoundNotes. Today we're going to be talking about things I barely understand. So we've got a student that submitted a question. He's working on BI reports. He's talking about a lot of acronyms. I'm way out of my depth, so I'm calling in some professional help. So Jessica Wolfe and Derek Huether are here. Thank you both for joining the call.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
All right, so before we get started, we should talk about Jessica's hip because she's very old and infirm.
Oh my goodness. So we were supposed to do this podcast yesterday, and of course I ended up being a problem. So I went to go get a hip injection. Of cortisone, I'm old, yeah, but almost immediate relief. But so funny, I'm sitting with the doctor, and I'm asking him, like, so how many of these have you done on a human? How many have you done on a cadaver? And right before he's getting ready to, like, put the needle in, I'm like, would you lie to me? Have you really done these before? I'm sure I totally made him feel so bad, but afterwards it was so good. I feel like my age again, I guess. So I was feeling like a 50, 60, maybe 70-year-old. Sorry, guys. But like, oh man, it hurts so bad, but today's feeling a lot better. So thank you for rescheduling.
Well, I'm glad you're feeling better. Derek, how are you? Are you
I'm
all right?
I'm old.
Oh.
Okay.
I feel my aches. My back hurts.
Oh.
So that's all right. No cortisone shots for me.
I'm technically the oldest person on the podcast, but I'm not going to complain about anything. We're going to get to Mahesh's question. So Mahesh was in my class last week.
Mm-hmm.
He came up and asked me questions. He started talking about business intelligence reports and ETL stuff. And I'm like, dude, I'm way out of my depth. Thankfully, both of you guys have done this kind of work. So I'm going to play the question so that everybody can hear it.
Hi, my name is Mahesh, and the question I had is, as a product owner for a BI reporting platform, I typically get requests for new reports. And this might entail bringing the data from a CRM platform or any other platform into the data warehouse. So that requires building ETL for that, and then developing the report on top of that, which typically cannot be done within like a 2-week sprint. So how would I go about taking this requirement from the customer and converting into shippable user stories that can be delivered through a Scrum methodology? Thanks.
So he's got reports he has to create. They're too big to fit into a sprint. Before we get into that, just in case there's folks watching who don't know about business intelligence stuff, who don't know about the report generation, and don't know what ETL is, can one of you give like a very quick explanation of what that is?
Jessica.
I was gonna say Derek, because I look at it from a product perspective. He'll be able to tell you more from an ETL perspective for sure.
For people who are not familiar with all this stuff, which I barely am, I know enough to know that I'm out of my depth. When people are talking about business intelligence reports, what kind of stuff is that? What kind of work is that?
So the way I looked at it, back in the day, we had a data warehouse, and so it was just tons and tons of data that the enterprise was collecting on their customers or different, let's just say different things. And what they're going to do is they're going to look at that data from different perspectives, and they're going to chronicle that data, or they're going to create a dictionary of that data, and then they're going to use that data to create reports, hopefully things that will inform the business. And so that's what the business intelligence team does, is they take that data and they try to give it meaning, and then create something that is consumable by the organization.
Okay, so in ETL, Jessica, you said it's extract, transform, and load?
Yeah, so in essence, there are many different places that they can get this data from. We need to extract it from wherever it is. So like some companies, they have data feeds that come from different places where they have to extract that data, put into a data lake. Then they actually need to massage the data, transform it, make it useful, and then they can load it up into something like a report. So I guess that would be kind of the essence of it without getting into too many details of the technology.
Right. Okay, and just to show you how old I am, I remember doing stuff similar to this, but with EDI, so I didn't even know about data. It didn't exist back in the day. All right, so he's got to create these reports, he's got to pull stuff from all over the place, he's got to figure out what data he needs, how to put it together in a way that it's able to be put into some kind of report, and that's going to take longer than 2 weeks.
Absolutely.
So his question was, coming out of Scrum class, how can he put together a story, or how can he capture the requirements in some way that he can actually get something done in a sprint that they can show to somebody? Because I keep going back and forth, you can't have work that's bigger than a sprint.
Right.
And what I said to him was, there's probably another way to look at this work that you're just not accustomed to. Because that's just been my experience. When people can't figure out how to break it up, they just haven't thought of a way to do it yet.
Yeah.
But you guys
Totally
have
agree.
more experience with this, so I'm going to now hand it over to you. Have at it.
Yay! So I'm going to start on the product side, and then I'm going to let Derek take over the process side, because really I think it starts with product and what they're asking for. A lot of times, what I've noticed, being somebody more on the developer team than a product owner, and I've been guilty of this as a product owner, is that what I'm asking for is I'm telling them how to do it, and I'm not telling them the value I need. So I'm saying I need this report with these columns, these rows, and I need it once a month, right? I want to get into going from the other standpoint, I want to get into the reasons why. So if I'm the developer, there might be an easier way to get you this information, and you're asking, like for me, I'm like, well, I might need this, I might need that, I might need all these things, and it turns into a bigger thing than it doesn't have to be. So when we think about all of the data that's needed in a report and where they're getting that data from, maybe the web services and listeners and things like that aren't built yet, so those are underlying things. And if it's for data that isn't as meaningful for me, then maybe we can cut some of that stuff out to get them that report faster.
Okay. So sort of like the skateboard instead of the car.
Yeah, I would say the shoes first. Let's get them some like socks on their feet. Show them the socks.
Let's get them feet.
Yeah, like we don't necessarily in that first sprint, we don't have to deliver the finished product, but let's show them where we're getting to. So we might say, okay, well, we need to access this feed that we don't have access to yet. So we're going to go to this vendor to get this feed. That's going to take a little bit of time. This is the work that we did, and now this is where we're at. We know that we can get these data points. Now, how do we want to make these data points relational to other data points? That could be another story, right?
Okay. So you're not so much worried about the fact that they can't give you like feedback from the perspective of this is what the customer would think, because the customer doesn't care and isn't going to see this stuff.
Right.
I still would include the customer somewhat in the process, though. So this way they understand the level of effort that's happening when they ask for this, and it might change their direction in the future when they ask for these type of things.
Okay. All right, Derek, do you have any thoughts on this?
I do. So the experience
Can you
I've
share them
had,
with us?
I could certainly share it. So I would say about probably 10 years ago, I was working with a company. I was a coach, and they were a medical supplier, okay, and they needed a report. So someone in purchasing needed a report, and it was the same problem. It came into a team, and they go, "We need this report for purchasing," and so and again, I don't even remember the type. It was back in the day. There were like different reports that you could use. It wasn't SQL reporting services, but it was some system. What was it? Think of a tablet. So they came with very specific requests saying, we need this report. And as Jessica was saying, oh, we need these columns, these rows, da 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 da. And the team said, yeah, we can't get that because we don't even know where the data is. And so the analyst in the team pushed back. Actually, the product owner on the team pushed back on the business and said, so what specifically do you need this data for? You know, do you know the information that you really need? And the purchaser was, well, actually, no, we're not absolutely sure. What we were hoping for you to do was give us the report. We were going to run the report and then see what was working. And then we were going to come and ask you to change the report again and again and again until we found the information that we really need.
Wow.
And so the team stopped short right there, and they're like, okay, wait a second. So how can we provide value to this customer? Because they're like all the other customers. They don't know what they want until they see it. And so with that approach, the team kept stepping back again and again and again, going, what can we give them within the sprint to give us clarity? And so they arrived at, we're going to give them a dump to Excel. and then they're going to figure it out. And so so they're going to hold the customer accountable a little bit, saying, we're going to give you a dump of the system where you know the data is coming from. We're going to dump it to Excel. It's up to you to figure out what fields you start to use where the data is informative. And then you're going to come back and tell us which fields are actually meaningful and how you're using it. And again, that shared responsibility gave the team some time, but also they wound up not wasting a lot of time building a report that the customer really wasn't going to use.
So I want to ask you guys a question. The closest I came to this was when I did work at Chesapeake, and there was a lot of data that had to be captured about the wells and the drills and the mud and all that stuff. And all the different places had to be pulled together for different reports. Somebody comes in, they say, I need these columns, whatever, from these tables, and I'm going to say, well, do you really need that? If they say no, do you think it would be okay to say, all right, in this sprint, let's just pull 2 pieces of data and put them together. Make sure we can do that, show you what these look like together. If you need them both, we can add a third. And we can just build it iteratively. Or is that just a waste of time? Is that the first thing that you were talking about, Derek, when they were saying we're just going to keep changing it?
I believe that they don't even know what done is. They just they asked for a report, but what they needed was that information. And so we needed to help them understand what the information they even needed. So I say, unfortunately, when they say, we need this data, this data, this data, that's like asking from a customer, asking the team for technical implementation of something versus saying, I need this. And to your point, absolutely, you could, if they have certainty around a field that they saw in another report, well, then you can give them that and verify it, and then come back and add another field and another field and another field. And you could probably do this in short succession, but again, it's confirming what they really need, versus what they think they want, and then iteratively deploy value to them.
Even taking a step back from that too, though, if you can help walk them through the process in their business life of where they actually are needing this information. Like at what point are you saying, oh, I'm going to look at this report? What's happening, right? So what question is it answering for you at that moment? How often do you need the report? Because if we can come back to what value it's bringing you, then we can start to figure out, okay, well, how does the information here relate to answering that question that you need to answer at that time? So really getting back to the business purpose of it, I think really drives what those requirements should be. And sometimes
so both of you are kind of pointing at that. You've got to go back to the business need and figure that out first.
Yeah, and it's so important for, I think, the development team to understand the business need. And that's where I think the business sometimes doesn't realize that sometimes maybe you need to get your developer to sit with you and actually show them what you do.
All right, so Jessica, when you started, you were talking about getting stuff from different places and putting them in lakes and things like that. One of the things that I used to have to do was work with teams to get data from here, data from there, and just put it into some new database that we would set up just so that something else could feed off of it. Mm-hmm. It had to be converted and adjusted and all this stuff. Is that the kind of thing, if I'm setting up that new database, which is just going to be the thing that we draw water from, is that something that you guys would consider to be valuable for a customer? Because it's not like we're going to ship it to a customer. It's just an interim step. And what I'm trying to avoid is delivering work for like the development team or the QA team. Is that interim step still valuable or not?
If we can pull from it to show something, even if it's just an XML export, yeah.
Okay. So it can be stuff that's sort of part of the workflow process, or what will eventually be the workflow process, just so we can demonstrate we can actually do this. I guess that would be the value, right?
Well, let me say this. There's 2 steps, right? You can still build your report and stub out the data, because you're going to be, like, if you're thinking about how an API calls to the database, right? So we're going to assume the data is there, even though in the back end, maybe people are actually building it, but we can stub out that data and produce fake data.
Fake your report,
fake it till you make it. Show them, okay, this is what it's going to look like. We still have a bit of work to do to connect to the database, but this is what you can expect to see. So we can stub out the report.
Is it wrong to expect that when they come in and say, I want a report, that they're going to be able to tell me what the report should tell them? I mean, it seems like that would be, and maybe this is why you guys are saying go back to the business need, but If somebody came in and said, build me a report, I'd be like, okay, what do you want in it? If they're like, I don't know, what do you got? Like,
That's right.
Go away.
That's what happens, though. They don't know what they want, and they're trying to, again, it's always coming back to the business saying, well, what value is it going to provide you? And sometimes they're under different motivations. You know, maybe they have to create reports. Maybe that's what, or maybe, you know, they're getting credit for having you create reports for them. I don't know.
This is why the product owner job is absolutely, on a Scrum team, in my opinion, the hardest job, because you are that liaison that is going to try to bring real value to the business and not necessarily just be a task handler, right? You're the person who gets to help make the decisions about what value looks like, and you're going to collaborate with your development team on the best way to do that.
Okay. So to try to recap it, the first thing would be to kind of push back on the business and make sure that they understand what they're asking for and make sure that there's clarity on what they're going to use it for and why they need it.
I wouldn't say push back. Work with them. Because I hate the term push back, because it's kind of like an argument there, right? Instead, we're going to hug each other and figure out like what the actual need is. It's a little late. It's like 8:30 at night, so I'm feeling lovey-dovey. It's been a long day.
I'm thinking about hugging clients, and it just feels really me too awkward.
Virtual hugs.
I guess when I say push back, to me that's healthy conflict.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Pushing back to try to sharpen the idea.
Yeah.
But if they have, once we have clarity on that finding ways to bring pieces of that in are okay if we know where we're going. What we want to avoid is just putting a whole ton of stuff into a report that's going to take 4 sprints to do. We've got to find some way to make that smaller. What if we know all the stuff and it really is 4 sprints of work?
Then we still show them stuff iteratively. Derek, you can jump in.
Right. I mean, that's what I would want to do, again, is give it to them quick and dirty and let them play with it and verify that that's really what they needed or wanted. And it might be, I give them 4 spreadsheets, you know, because I'm coming from 4 different data sources. And at the end, what we're trying to do is take one database and take an output from that and make it an input into the next database, whatever. We're going to create a view or something, or to create this report. Well, again, give them the individual pieces and let them figure it out, and then come back to them and find out what was valuable, what was not valuable. And they might say, oh, you gave us all this information or all this data. Right, but we didn't prevent you from solving your immediate problem. We weren't the impediment. We gave you some options, and then but there was a positive byproduct because now you know more of what you need. And so now we can go back and we can give you a report that's meaningful instead of iterating on the report again and again and again.
Okay. What if we subbed it out like Jessica said, could we just fill it in like a little bit at a time? Would that work as well?
Well, you're subbing it out.
There's some dummy data in the whole thing, but at the end of the first sprint we've got a live feed for 2 of the fields. And then the next sprint we've added 2 more. And just work on it that way.
Well,
no,
I take pause with that. And I only take pause with that.
Umbrage. Take umbrage. Don't take pause. Take umbrage.
Umbrage. I'll take umbrage. Again, worked with a client many years ago, government contract. They had front-end group, the back-end group. Front-end group was 6 months out ahead of the back-end group. They designed these beautiful reports, beautiful interfaces. The next contractor showed up to do the back-end group, and they threw their hands in the air. What the hell? They wound up being the enemy because suddenly they were saying, yeah, the data doesn't support the designs that the first group provided the customer.
Okay.
Customer fell in love with the design, but there was no data to support it. And so be careful if you're stubbing out a report if you haven't identified the underlying data that's going to feed it.
I agree with that notion. Luckily, I think we're dealing with the back-end people to answer his question, right? Because they're the ETL team. I'm hoping, right? So let's assume that we have the back. We're going to assume that we have the back-end people there. So I'm going to say, if best case scenario, why not give a combination of giving them the Excel spreadsheets, giving them the data they need so this way they can start mind whatting that looks like, and us creating something that is a framework of kind of what they might want to see as we iterate, right? So like we're saying, okay, you have this data, we're thinking it might look this way. We're not actually giving them the stubbed out report to like hold and have. We're going to do that in the sprint review, or even before. I don't necessarily say.
So this is going to make the front end people happy too, because we're going to figure all the pieces out before we ask them to build anything, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We can do it all together.
They're never happy, so that'd be good.
Well, unfortunately, I mean, think of the process of building a report. It usually starts with the data, and then you're trying to render it in a way that's helpful to the customer. And so you gotta, again, I've had the process of where we would stop short of letting people get to the report writer or the report specialist, because in order for it to be ready to be worked by the specialist, we had to have clarity around the data sources.
Okay.
Designing the report, that was easy. You're just moving elements around a page. It was getting that data and getting it right. That was the heavy lift, and that was what we really needed to have ready first.
Okay, cool. All right, guys, thank you very much for doing this. Maheesh, I hope that was helpful to you, and I appreciate your patience and for letting me record you ask the questions. So, thank you both. I'm looking at the screen now so I can say, hey, thanks. I hope you guys have a great night. And if you have any questions, you can send them to dave.pryor@leadingagile.com. We'll put them in a future podcast. Jessica, what if they want to get in touch with you?
At the Jessica Wolfe on Twitter, or jessica.wolfe@leadingagile.com.
All right. And Derek?
And
what if they want to take umbrage with you?
At Derek Huether at Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn.
Cool. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.